The Iowa cornfield stretched endlessly under the August sun of 1917, golden and swaying. 20-year-old Tommy Brennan wiped sweat from his brow, his calloused hands gripping the plow handle. War seemed impossibly distant here in Cedar Falls, yet it had already claimed his older brother, Michael, somewhere in the trenches of France. Tommy's mother hadn't smiled since the telegram arrived 3 months ago. When the recruiting officer came to town, Tommy didn't hesitate. His father protested. Someone needed to work the farm, but Tommy's mind was made up. He owed it to Michael. At the enlistment office in Des Moines, Tommy stood among dozens of young men, all eager, all terrified. The medical examiner noted his poor eyesight and stamped his papers, support services, mail courier. Tommy felt his stomach sink. Not infantry. Not artillery. Mail delivery. His father's disappointed silence during the goodbye dinner cut deeper than any words could. As the train pulled away from Cedar Falls Station, Tommy pressed his face against the window, watching his mother's figure grow smaller. She waved a white handkerchief until she disappeared completely. Tommy wondered if he'd ever prove himself worthy of Michael's sacrifice. Camp Sherman in Chillicothe, Ohio, sprawled across muddy fields filled with identical white tents. The November wind cut through Tommy's thin uniform as Sergeant Davis barked orders at the new recruits. While infantry units drilled with rifles, Tommy's group learned postal regulations, map reading, and motorcycle operation. The other mail couriers joked and played cards, treating their assignment as a stroke of luck. Tommy couldn't share their relief. At night, he wrote letters home on rough paper, his words careful and measured. He told his mother about the food, the weather, the other men. He never mentioned the gnawing feeling that he was wasting his chance to honor Michael. In the mess hall, he overheard infantry soldiers talking about France, about the mud and rats and German machine guns. Part of him envied them their purpose. Corporal James Wheeler became Tommy's unlikely friend. A mechanic from Detroit, Wheeler had actually volunteered for mail service. "Someone's gotta do it, farm boy," Wheeler said, teaching Tommy to handle the motorcycles. "Those letters from home, they're the only thing keeping men alive out there." Tommy wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at his conscience every morning. The USS Henderson pitched violently through Atlantic swells in January 1918. Tommy hung over the railing, seasickness racking his body. Below deck, 2,000 men were crammed into spaces designed for half that number. The stench of vomit, sweat, and fear permeated everything. Wheeler, immune to seasickness, brought Tommy water and hardtack, joking that submarines would target something more important than mail carriers. But Tommy had seen the posted casualty lists. 3 transport ships sunk the previous month. Every night, he lay in his hammock listening to German U-boats that might lurk beneath them. He thought about drowning in the cold, black water, never having fired a shot, never having proved himself. His father's disappointed face haunted his dreams. On the 9th day, France appeared through morning fog, a gray line on the horizon that gradually resolved into the port of Saint-Nazaire. Men crowded the rails, cheering and pointing. Tommy felt no joy, only a hollow anticipation. As they disembarked onto French soil, the distant rumble of artillery rolled across the landscape like approaching thunder. The Western Front waited somewhere beyond those hills. Tommy shouldered his pack, following Wheeler into the unknown, wondering if mail delivery would keep him far from the fighting or if war found everyone eventually. The American Expeditionary Forces postal station sat 3 miles behind the front lines, housed in a partially destroyed French farmhouse. Shell craters dotted the surrounding fields, and the constant thunder of artillery had become background noise Tommy barely noticed anymore. Captain Harrison, a weary postal officer from Boston, assigned routes with mechanical efficiency. Tommy's job was simple: collect mail from headquarters and deliver it to forward positions. The work was monotonous but dangerous. German artillery randomly shelled the supply roads, and Tommy had learned to recognize the whistle of incoming shells. He'd seen 2 couriers killed in his first month, one by shrapnel, another when his motorcycle hit a crater. Wheeler told him not to think about it, to just focus on the next delivery, the next day. In March, spring rains turned the roads to rivers of mud. Tommy's motorcycle bogged down constantly, forcing him to push it through knee-deep muck. His hands were perpetually frozen, his uniform never dry. But the soldiers' faces when he arrived made it bearable. They tore open letters from home with shaking hands, their eyes hungry for connection to a world beyond the trenches. One lieutenant told Tommy, "You're more important than ammunition, kid. You bring us reasons to keep fighting." April brought clearer skies and increased aerial activity. Tommy had learned to recognize aircraft silhouettes, Allied Nieuports and Spads, German Fokkers and Albatrosses. Dogfights often erupted overhead, tiny machines spinning and diving while men on the ground watched like spectators at a deadly circus. Tommy envied the pilots their glory, their obvious contribution to the war effort. One afternoon, delivering mail to an observation post on a low ridge, Tommy met Lieutenant Sarah Morrison, an Army nurse from Philadelphia. She was tending wounded observers, her uniform stained with blood, her face exhausted but determined. "You're the mail courier," she said, not quite making it a question. "The men talk about you. Say you never miss a delivery, no matter what." Tommy blushed, uncomfortable with praise. Sarah smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen in months. They talked while she worked, Tommy learning she'd volunteered after her fiancé was killed at Belleau Wood. She understood his need to prove himself, his guilt at the relative safety of his assignment. "We all serve however we can," she said softly. "There's no shame in that." As Tommy left, German artillery began pounding the ridge. He looked back to see Sarah calmly continuing her work, steady hands wrapping bandages while shells exploded around her. Real courage, Tommy realized, looked nothing like he'd imagined. May 12, 1918, started like any other day. Tommy was preparing his morning route when Captain Harrison burst into the barn they used as a garage, his face pale. "Brennan, we need someone to fly to the 94th Aero Squadron at Toul. Critical dispatch about German troop movements. Lieutenant Peters is sick, and you're the only one who knows the route to Toul." Tommy's heart hammered. "Sir, I've never been in an airplane." "You're going in one now." "That's an order." The two-seater Airco DH.4 waited in a makeshift airfield, engine already running. The pilot, Lieutenant Jack Hastings from Texas, grinned at Tommy's obvious terror. "Just don't throw up in my cockpit, mail boy," he shouted over the engine roar. Tommy climbed into the observer's seat, clutching the dispatch bag like a lifeline. The takeoff was violent, the ground falling away with stomach-lurching speed. Tommy gripped the cockpit sides, knuckles white, as farmland transformed into a patchwork quilt below. Hastings banked sharply, and Tommy's stomach flipped. But then he saw it. The trenches carved across France like infected wounds, artillery flashing, smoke rising in columns. The war laid bare from above, terrible and mesmerizing. For 10 minutes, Tommy forgot his fear, transfixed by this new perspective on the conflict that had consumed his life. They were 15 minutes from Toul when Hastings suddenly swore and banked hard left. Tommy looked up to see 5 aircraft diving toward them, distinctive black crosses on their wings. German fighters. Fokker D.Is, fast and deadly. Hastings pushed the DH.4 into a steep dive, the engine screaming. "There's a Lewis gun behind your seat," he shouted. "Can you shoot?" Tommy had fired his father's hunting rifle, nothing more. But he grabbed the machine gun, his hands finding the grips instinctively. The Fokkers came in fast, tracers stitching the air around them. One passed so close Tommy saw the pilot's face, young, determined, terrifyingly skilled. The aircraft bore markings Tommy recognized from intelligence briefings, 3 diagonal stripes. Oberleutnant Franz Richter, 14 confirmed kills, one of Germany's rising aces. Hastings threw the DH.4 through impossible maneuvers, but Richter stayed with them. Tommy squeezed the Lewis gun trigger, bullets spraying wildly. Nothing hit. Another Fokker raked their left wing, fabric tearing like paper. Hastings grunted, "Hit." Blood spotted his leather jacket. The plane shuddered, losing altitude. They were going down, and Tommy realized with crystal clarity that he was about to die 3 miles above France, having never truly contributed anything to the war effort. His mother's face flashed before him. He'd failed her, failed Michael, failed everyone. The DH.4 spiraled downward, black smoke trailing from the engine. Hastings slumped forward, barely conscious. Tommy grabbed the stick, having no idea how to fly but knowing death waited below if he did nothing. He pulled back hard, and miraculously, the aircraft leveled somewhat, though still descending rapidly. Richter's Fokker circled like a shark, positioning for the killing shot. Something shifted in Tommy then. All his frustration, his guilt, his desperate need to matter crystallized into pure focus. He remembered Wheeler's words, "Everyone serves however they can." He wasn't infantry, wasn't artillery, wasn't even supposed to be in the sky, but he was here now, and men were counting on him. The dispatch in his bag might save hundreds of lives. Sarah Morrison's steady hands came to mind. Courage wasn't about glory, it was about doing your job when everything fell apart. Tommy swung the Lewis gun toward Richter's approaching fighter. Instead of spraying bullets, he waited, breathed, remembered hunting rabbits with his father in Iowa cornfields. Lead the target. Squeeze, don't pull. The Fokker grew larger in his sights. 50 yards. 40. 30. Tommy exhaled slowly and pressed the trigger in controlled bursts. Tracers reached out, and impossibly, incredibly, they found their mark. The Fokker's engine exploded in flames and black smoke. Richter's fighter spun earthward, trailing fire, crashing into a field 2 miles distant. The remaining German fighters broke off, likely low on fuel. But Tommy had no time to process what he'd done. The DH-.4 was barely flying, losing altitude fast. Hastings groaned, coming around. "Can you land this thing?" Tommy asked desperately. "Gonna try," Hastings mumbled, taking back the stick with blood-slicked hands. They cleared a line of trees by inches, headed for an open field. The ground rushed up terrifyingly fast. The wheels touched, bounced, touched again. The aircraft slewed sideways, the landing gear collapsing, and they skidded 50 yards through mud before slamming into a fence post. The impact threw Tommy forward, his head cracking against the cockpit rim. Stars exploded across his vision. He tasted blood. But he was alive. Tommy crawled from the wreckage, pulling Hastings out just as American soldiers came running from a nearby encampment. A medic attended Hastings while Tommy, dizzy and disoriented, clutched the dispatch bag. "Toul," he gasped. 94th Aero Squadron. Critical intelligence. A captain stared at him. "Son, you're at Toul. This is the 94th's airfield." Tommy had crash-landed exactly where he needed to be. He handed over the dispatch, then collapsed, unconscious before he hit the ground. Tommy woke in a field hospital 3 days later. Sarah Morrison sat beside his bed, her face breaking into that rare smile. "You're famous," she said. "They confirmed the kill. You shot down Franz Richter." The words seemed impossible. Him? A mail courier from Cedar Falls, Iowa? But Sarah showed him newspapers. Stars and Stripes had run the story. Mail courier downs German ace. Letters had poured in from across the American Expeditionary Forces. Captain Harrison visited, grinning broadly. "You're being decorated, Brennan. Distinguished Service Cross. And they're asking if you want flight training." Tommy thought about it. The terror, the violence, the impossible luck of surviving. Then he thought about the letters he'd delivered, the soldiers' faces, Wheeler's wisdom. "No, sir," he said finally. "I'd like to keep delivering mail. If that's all right." Harrison looked surprised, then understanding dawned. "You know what you're doing out there, don't you? You figured it out." "Yes, sir. I think I have." 6 months later, the armistice came. Tommy returned to Cedar Falls in December 1918, his medal in his duffel bag. His mother wept at the train station. His father gripped his shoulder with rough, proud hands. That night, Tommy sat at Michael's grave, the Iowa winter cold seeping through his coat. "I did my part, Mike," he whispered. "Different than yours, but I served. I hope that's enough." The wind through the cornfield seemed to answer, rustling stalks that would grow again come spring, like the world itself renewing after terrible wounds. Tommy had learned that heroism wore many faces, that glory mattered less than duty faithfully performed. He'd gone to war a boy seeking validation. He'd returned a man who'd found his own measure of worth.